All right, good morning. Sorry about that confusion with the link. We thought that I had been made the host of the original one, but it wasn't working. So I sent out an emergency new link. So I'm glad that many of you are finding it. And we'll get started here in just a second. All right, we seem to have slowed down a little bit on people joining. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the OAS Lunch and Learn series. You get me as your host today, so pardon the technical difficulties, but Tim is off today. Um, so just the typical housekeeping. Our goal here is just to provide you guys with additional insights into Unanet AE and the increased functionality to be able to use it to its fullest. As always, feel free to ask questions during the presentation. I'll be monitoring the chat, or you can just come off mute and ask your question. And we'll also have Q&A at the end for either today's topic or really any question that you may want to ask. We're happy to field here. And then we always welcome feedback and suggestions. Any additional topics you would like to see featured on upcoming meetings or anything like that, please just reach out to Tim and he'll do his best to get that on a future agenda. Um, and with that being said, I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Jessica Gandy. She's one of our senior ERP consultants here at OAS, and she is going to share with us about the pay when paid functionality in Unanet. It can be a little confusing. There's a lot of steps, so we thought that would be something good to go over and discuss with all of you today. Jessica, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Now it's share. Thank you, Mary. Just confirming you can see Unanet.
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks,
Yeah.
Melanie. Thank you. So like Mary said, the pay when paid is a little tedious to set up, and there's quite a few steps to get it flowing correctly. So as you're billing and receiving payments from your clients, these vendor invoices show up on your pay when paid report. So first we'll go over what needs to be set up. First in global settings on your AR tab, in the receipts and wizards breakdowns, both of these boxes break down receipts to WBS and break down receipts to revenue type. Both need to be checked. And then in your PAPM bill review settings, you want to include your ICC WIP. So that will help make sure you're populating your reports correctly. The next step in your chart of accounts on your ICC and OCC expense and income GL accounts, you want to make sure your PM type is out of contract consultants or in contract consultants for both. And you can, I'm only going to show you this one, but as you're reviewing your GL codes, the drop down is right in this PM type. So I'm not going to mess with this, but you want them to match for your revenue and your expenses. Then next, for your vendors, when you're setting up your vendors, you want to make sure this consultant box is checked, which is right under the parent firm. And then in your payment terms, you want your payment term to be set to pay when paid, this PWP. So that will ensure your vendors are set up correctly to follow the pay when paid path. And then in your projects, when you're setting up your contract levels and caps, when you right click and go to contract levels and caps, there is a If it's not in your grid, you can add it in using the gear icon, but it should default in there. There's an ICC fixed fee portion that when you're setting up your projects, if you are expecting $5,000 for your in-consult or your in-contract consultants, you would apply that amount right here. You might have a bigger contract fee for a phase, and that's fine. You just want to make sure that your ICC fixed fee portion is correct. And this is optional. This will not affect whether or not your out of contract consultants flow correctly. But if you have a cap that you want to apply to your out of contract consultants, you can go to this project management type, select your out of contract consultants, and you can apply a cap here for those consultants. So once those things are set up, when you receive your just making sure I'm not missing anything. When you receive your vendor invoice, you come in and I pre-filled this just so we were ready to roll for the lunch and learn, but you would select your vendor. You would want to make sure you're using either the ICC or OCC expense code that you have set up in your chart of accounts. So when you get to PA bill review, just want to make sure we're all refreshed. You will see I have a ICC consultant and then I have an OCC consultant that we have here ready to bill. There's a few ways you can tell if you have WIP. One is adding in this WIP column in your view up here. If it's not there for you, you can add it in by selecting the column chooser and checking that WIP box, and I'll bring it in for you. You may have to drag it around. It might not show up right at the front. You'll see your ready to bill up here, and then you'll see your ICC WIP broken down in this box right here. This should automatically be there for you. You shouldn't have to do anything special to add that in. So the ICC amount, when you enter a vendor invoice on this transactions grid, you have to pull in this column if it's not already there. Some good ones to pull in. Where did it go? Add the ICC amount. And then your OCC amount will just show in the amount column. So it's kind of confusing sometimes if you don't have both of those columns in, you might not see that WIP for your ICCs. And then on the fixed fee tab, I might have to play with this. Every time I hit save, it resorts itself for some reason. There's a lot of columns that are helpful when you're billing. Your contract amount, your billed amount, you have your billing percent complete, your current amount, your ICC contract. If it's not showing again, the gear icon has a lot of options that you can pull in if you don't see them readily available in your PA bill review. But you have the ICC contract amount, your current ICC to apply, your ICC effort, which should match your ICC contract amount, but if you're using a markup, that might be a little different. You can see what was previously billed. And then you have a column for ICC WIP, so you can see what's pending. And you have a column for your OCC WIP, so you can see what OCCs are pending. So when you're ready to bill, you want to make sure you're updating your percent complete. So I'm going to bill to 100% here. And then my current ICC to apply is going to be that WIP. I'm going to drag that over so we can see it. So I'm going to apply $250 of this 100% to ICC. So when you hit save, go to view invoice. Sorry, it's just taking a second. I'm in the demo database, so it's sometimes not as fast. When we preview the invoice, as most of you probably know, if you've been working with ICCs, you're not going to see that ICC amount on your invoice, but you will see your OCC consultant invoice there. So when we finalize, assign, and post and archive, So now that we have the invoice finalized, we're gonna just take a look and see what you should expect to see when you've used this process. So the when the system populates the sales journal, it will break down your revenue by your contract consulting, your ICC consulting, and then your fixed fee revenue. So it took that $500 that we invoiced on the fixed fee column and it broke it out by 250 for our ICC, 250 for our fixed fee portion of that. And then when you have your consultant invoices to confirm they were linked properly, you can go to Tools, Linked Transactions, and under the Purchases tab, you should see those vendor invoices linked here. If you don't, you can link them by adding new purchase items. There's nothing to link, but if there was anything, you would just check the box and hit OK. So if you don't see these, maybe the process is a little broken and we're here to help you with that. Maybe you accidentally put your ICC consultant invoice on hold when you should have left it as ready to bill. That's a possibility. But this is what you should see. And then when you receive your payment from your client, we'll post that payment real quick. So the system, when you're applying your payment, will break down your receipt journal by these different receipt types. So C is your out of contract consultants, I is your in contract consultants, F fixed fee, and then if you're billing labor, ODC, retainer, retainage, it will break it down by the appropriate code. So we'll hit save. And now that we have a receipt journal posted to our sales journal, we can look at the different report options that are available. There's a few different ones. So you can come to custom reports and look for these independently. Pay when paid. So there's 3 different ones. Pay when paid by project, pay when paid by receipt, pay when paid by vendor. I like the pay when paid by receipt because it offers you the option when you hit preview, it will create an AP check batch for you. So any vendor invoices that are okay to pay, it will create a batch, which we'll go through after we look at this. So hit print, and I just use today's check date just to keep it clean for visual purposes. Make it a little bigger. So on here, you see the different invoices. There's a couple consultant invoices that were invoiced on a sales journal, received a cash receipt on, and you can see the invoice number, whether it was an OCC, ICC, what was charged, and then over here in this column, it'll say yes to pay. And at the bottom, I like this report. The other pay when paid reports, I'm not seeing this on, but it'll give you a summary of what is okay to pay. So it just helps with the visual aspect of the report. If you ever see a total variance down here, that is typically a markup. For example, on the OCC invoice we just billed, the consultant invoice was 150, but it was marked up to 165. So that's what that variance is if you ever see it. I'm going to close this. And since we checked that create batch, you can go into AP check writing and load from batch. We got a couple in here, so I'm just gonna look for the one for today. So you find the batch you want to load, hit load, and it's going to show you your ready to pay vendor invoices. You can either work through the prompts next to print the checks, or if you want to take a closer look and decide, you know what, we're going to hold off on something, you can uncheck it and then go to the next screen and print your checks and post like normal. There's a couple other reports that clients like. Consultant tracking. by project, then vendor is one that's kind of popular. Um, so we'll hit print. So this just shows you your consultant cost, your consultant effort, what invoice it was billed on. The total billed is the total amount for that invoice. So that it would include your fixed fee. And then the consultant billed is what the portion of that invoice was for your ICC or OCC. And then it will show you what was received. The difference is it doesn't show you if, or it doesn't give you as much detail, but it's a simplified report, if that helps. I feel like I went through that really fast and I apologize, but I'm sure there's questions. And we're happy to answer.
I have a question on the receipt journal. Um,
Yes,
your C's and the I's and the L's or the F's, do
yes.
do they populate automatically, or did you select those? Because
So that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, because right now I'm needing to select those.
Okay, so you can manually select them. However, when we set up the global settings, this checkbox will break that down. So this will break down to the WBS level, and then this will recognize the revenue type on the sales journal. So
Okay.
whatever's on the sales journal will post to your receipt journal if that's checked.
Okay, and that's the global settings that you were referring to. I need to do some maintenance on that, but I just wanted to see
Yep,
which was connecting that dots. Thank you.
yep. You're welcome.
Another thing on that I was just thinking of too, is that it's important that you allow the system to populate that for you, either using your receipt wizard or the find by invoice number or project. If you're trying to manually type in, you just go in and put in your AR account and the invoice number, it may not automatically populate that. Does that make sense?
Just for a visual, this is what Mary means. So I did the find by invoice number. Another good way or best practice way to pull in your invoice is the retainer wizard. Sorry, let me delete that out. Um, is the retainer wizard, this little wand off to the right. So this will let you select your invoices for that client. The way you do not want to pull in an invoice is just entering your ARGL right here and then pulling in an invoice. We'll just pull in this one because it will not auto-populate that receipt type for you.
Okay, and so those two ways were that you need to do this with the wizard, or what was the other one?
Yep, let me hit new just so you can see it. When you hit new, there's this find by invoice number or project. And it gives you the option of searching by either number. Um, does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it does.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thanks for that clarification, Mary.
Just an enhancement, not a clarification.
Jessica, when you were first initially in the global settings, you had
Yes.
said, okay, you want to click off WBS and revenue type, but was there anything else that was in there? It kind of,
Yep. This ICC WIP, this will show you your ICC WIP and PA bill review, so you don't miss that.
okay. And that was it. Okay. And then for the COI or COA, the chart of accounts, it was just making sure that the PM type was listed outside of the other two, metric and like cost type.
Yep.
Okay. And then so say we get a client or, a project manager sends in, they pre-bill for their ICC, like they have an idea, like what you were saying in the contract caps, like
Mhm.
I want to get ahead of the game, and I'm going to bill for this before we get any kind of, cost from the subconsultant, like before we get an invoice to apply to the project. We can do that retroactively by using
So
the tool in the sales journal.
yeah, so let's say you invoiced your IC or your phase to 100% and you get your consultant invoice after, you can manually add it you would just have to manually update the fixed fee revenue amount and whether it's ICC, well, it would be ICC, but and manually update your ICC amount. So
Okay.
let's say you got $30 more in ICC you wanted to bill, you would
Mhm.
change the 250 to 280, and then you could change this to 220, and then save it. And then you would also want to make sure that you come in here and link that vendor invoice. Um, you would want to make sure all those dots are connected.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
How does hi, this is Amy.
Hi, Amy.
Hi. How does this show up on the P&L statement?
It will break down your revenue type. So let's take a look at that. Let me just save this. I'm going to use with drill down so we can look at that. I'll just do it as of. So you'll have your GL codes here. It's kind of messy because it's a demo database, but you'd have your, billed fixed fee revenue. We should see that contract consulting revenue. I don't know why we have so many. It looks like people have been playing, but it'll break it down by each type. So we should see OCC on here, or out of contract. I think we just have them named different things, so that makes it a little. Does that help answer your question?
It does. Is it normal business practice to break those out, or because right now we just have everything under reimbursable revenue?
You're doing your in-contract consultant and ICCs as reimbursable revenue?
Yes.
So the system requires you to use the appropriate GL account. I'm wondering, Amy, are you looking at a custom financial statement where it was rolled together?
Well, I think, because we imported all of our data and that's where it was housed before, that it was just set up that way. I'm just trying to understand if we should be doing something different and separate it out, or
Jessica, can you go back to global settings, reopen global settings,
Sure.
and go to the invoice posting accounts? No, the revenue posting accounts, it's called.
My eyes are not working. There we go.
So here is how the system requires you to have revenue accounts for all the different things here. So you're going to have your um, your so here's your billed fixed fee revenue, which that one has. You also have a T&M revenue that's kind of, this one. The other two aren't. You don't have to break out overhead and profit. And then your reimbursable revenue is typically your ODCs, your actual reimbursables, your other direct costs other than consultants. But it also requires an OCC, which is your out of contract consultant. So that was like the 165 that we saw on Jessica's invoice. And then a separate revenue account for your in-contract consultants. So no matter how your data was in your prior system and how it was brought over, going forward, you have to recognize all of these accounts. However, what I'm wondering is if you weren't recognizing it this way previously, if you just have used the financial statement designer to lump together maybe these three accounts. Does that make sense in your case?
it does make sense. I think the difference is these were projects started before we switched over to Unanet. And I think we just decided to keep everything the way it was because it would be time consuming to update all the prior information. I think there's some setup in here that we haven't gone through just because of the legacy data.
Amy, we were the same way. When we brought in our data from our previous system, we actually used our old GL numbers and basically kind of disregarded what Unanet used. And what we found over the last year, trying to kind of get things going in the right direction, is that caused us a lot of issues and things not going in the right buckets, basically. So we've made great strides in getting our stuff realigned with the intended GL buckets, and but it has been a work in progress.
Okay, well, we haven't had any new projects with OCCs or ICCs, so this is actually very helpful if we do get to that point. But we can make sure, you know, going forward that we set this up correctly.
And I
Yeah.
think it's very important for that perspective going forward for you, because it allows you to have the integrity of your data, that your ICC or OCC revenue and your cost are equaling, so that you're not overstating or understating your financials. So that's how I use it, as a good check and balance.
That's a good point too. Thank you for all the feedback.
And as always, we're happy to look at it with you, Amy.
Thank you, Mary.
Any other questions? All great questions and feedback, and so thank you all. Any other questions about the pay when paid process? Or any other topic, anything that you guys are working on that we could help with today?
Could we just take a look at the vendor? I just want to take a look at that again to make sure I know
Yep.
how to set that up.
Yep, the consultant box up here needs to be checked right next to the active box. And then your payment term has to be pay when paid.
Okay.
Jessica, one of the things that the videos talked about was setting the default base codes. Is that something that's not a particular need? I mean, we've set ours up that way. We don't use the pay term, but yet we're also not cutting checks out of this either. So
Yeah, so there's the default expense code right here. So, you know, if Southern MEP is always going to be, you know, your consultant, you can set that right there. You can also set direct and indirect base codes. It's not needed, but it's helpful, you know, so if people are coding, they're using the correct codes. And
that's
also
that's where
just,
we set ours, was on the default basis at the bottom.
yep, so, but I mean, the default code is what shows up on your client invoice. So if it's like an ICC, you know, you might want that selected so that it's showing properly on your invoice. And let's say for some reason Southern MEP isn't an ICC consultant on an invoice, on the purchase journal, you can manually update the expense code. So, you know, it's not default and set in stone, but, you know, it's typically going to be correct for that vendor then.
That was part of our work in progress, was we actually now have dedicated expense codes set up that way, but I don't think we've got our vendor direction when we set up our vendors. I don't think we're using that. Something we'll
Yeah,
look
I
at.
think it's very helpful when you consistently have, you know, a vendor and it's the same code. It eliminates a lot of confusion for anybody entering your purchase journals.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The expense code, you know, kind of takes the place of doing the individual base codes,
Mhm.
you know, because the GL account should be in your expense codes. So, you know, it knows which GL account to pull, and you're also using, you know, the expense code, which a lot of times the people that are doing the AP entry are more familiar with the code as opposed to making sure they get the correct GL account kind of thing.
So I was just looking in my, this is Melanie, looking in my vendors, thing, you know, the payment terms. We don't seem to have the paid when paid available as an option.
Is that something
Yeah.
in global settings I missed explaining, Mary?
So that is in list management. So go to administration list management.
Sorry, I missed
And
that.
um, I typically change it to just user lists, and that's gonna just make the list smaller so you can find what you're looking for. But you were in the right place with the payment terms. So you can go there and manually add anything that's different from how you want to use it. So if you're not
Ah.
seeing pay when paid in there, you can just add it so that you'll have that as a selection.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Mary. I see that right now. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Well, if there's nothing else for today, again, thank you everyone for joining us. I'm just gonna go back to my slides here and just remind you to contact us with any questions or learning more about this topic. And then also when Tim sends out the link to the presentation, he'll also have a survey that you can answer. So please complete that. And then again, here's Tim's contact information if anyone needs to reach out to him, or of course to any of us here on the OAS team. Thank you again, everyone. And again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. Anybody that joined late will receive the recording, or if they just missed us altogether. But we had a little bit of a snafu here on our end. But thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
And everybody have a great week.